Hey, so today we're going to finish up this little 6x6 shed we've been doing, and we're doing the flashings. The other day I went round and ordered all my flashings. I've already put this one on. You'll have seen it in other videos, but just a quick rundown of how we do flashing or ordering a flashing. Put a square edge like this across where your flashing's going to go, and then from that point measure to where you want your flashing to go. So on this one I've wanted it to return into this bit of the sheet of iron, so I've measured that 145 mils, and then done the same on the other side. And then what I often do is with a vivid just write where it is, the sizes, so then when I get all my flashings turn up, I measure my flashings, write it on those, and then it's easier to allocate to it. You often think at the time, oh, it'll be easy, I'll know where it all goes, but a week passes and they all look the same. So we've popped that one on. So today we'll just go through how to do a barge flashing, how to finish your ridge cap flashing, corner flashings and window flashings, and then the same process is basically the same for every other one. So we'll just go through a few tips and tricks with that, and yeah, come on over. So I've got my flashing on the ground ready here, and the first measurement I'm going to want is this measurement up behind the gutter here. So I'm just going to jump up my trusty ladder, hook that there, and it's just going to come up behind the gutter there. So 2740 will be work, and that's on my short side. 2740, so I'll make a mark there. As you can see, I've only ordered my flashings a couple of 100 mils longer than they need to be, and that just gives me the opportunity to cut it down and fit it just how I want it. So then I'm just using my reds and greens. As you've seen through the shed, there's pretty much, you can build a whole shed with these as far as cutting goes. Some people might think, oh, why don't you use an angle grinder? An angle grinder will heat up the paint and ruin the protective layer, where these, as they cut, they fold it back over and keep that protective layer, so they're the best option. I'm just doing a cut away from my line first, and then cutting my line there. I know I don't need any of this extra top on this side, so I'm just going to cut that out of my way. So now for this next cut, I'm going to put this into position. So I got that up and under there, that's sitting, and now I just need to mark this to cut off the top. So this is going to get covered by the barge flashing afterwards. So I'm just going to cut that off pretty much at the same line of the roof. So mark up there. Just remembering when you're using your reds and greens, the side of the tin that you don't want to keep, your big bottom jaw stays on that side, so it's your waste side. So there we go, so that's in position now. Then I'll go down, get the bottom to fit snugly on. Get that grass out of there. So it just fits like that. As you can see, when I've measured this piece of my flashing, if you measure on a rib here, that's about 35 mils. I've made those 30 mils. because they don't need to be touching into that edge, and then it stops rubbing and marking your tin. So I'm just using Tex screws to hold these into position. Obviously I'm going to have to go through and take this plastic off. So if I just line my screw up in my wall and this screw up, and do that. You can also use rivets. Some people like Tex screws in the look, some people like rivets. If you use rivets, just drill a hole and pop your rivets in. I'm just going to hold that in position now, pull all this plastic off, and go through and screw that all off. Sometimes if your Tex screw's not going in, they just get a little bit of steel build up on the end of them, and if you keep trying to force it, it ends up cutting a bigger hole than you want. So just back it out, let the little bit of swarf come off, and then send that home. If you decide, okay, no, I want to rivet this, you can use a Tex screw, over screw it slightly, and that will leave your hole big enough for a rivet to pop in, and then just pop your rivet in there, and you have a nice tidy finish on that as well. So that's how you've done a corner flashing, pretty easy and straightforward. And then we're going to go on next and do the barges and show you how to do those cuts. So we're going to fit our barge flashings now. So same thing, just worked out what size they all are to allocate them to the four corners. I'm going to slip it up and under my ridge, and then we'll work out the centre cut and then do the cuts around the gutter. So I'll probably slip it up first, past a little bit, and just cut it out of the way of the gutter, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so we're going to work on the end of our barge flashing at the moment. Obviously when you're working with tin you're trying not to scratch it, but it does scratch reasonably easy. We always give you some black touch-up paint for this, so try not to, but if you do, just give it a touch-up afterwards and it'll be good as gold. So here, I'm going to have to cut a piece this off here to get it to sit down into my gutter, but I want to leave enough to fold a tab back round. So I'm going to do that now. So what I'm doing is you can extend your ruler and get a good line along the bottom edge of your tin. I'm going to mark that. And then I'm going to want to do a 30mm fold down. So I'm going to mark 30mm here, 30mm here. If you have a look in the end here, there's always a bit of a gap between your flashing and the end of your gutter, so I'm going to also do a fold round into there. So what I don't want to do is cut this whole way, otherwise that's going to not be in the right position. So if I hold that, it's about 50mm there. So I'm just going to put a mark there and there. And then if I mark, if you pull your plastic off, it is easier to mark with your pencil, but each to their own a little bit with that. So obviously when I do this fold down, this piece of the tab is not going to be there. So I'm going to cut that on my tin line, and then cut that there, fold that up. See, so now I'm getting a better idea of exactly where it's all fitting. So seeing like that's pretty good. Here I'm going to have to cut back a little bit of an angle like this, just so when that folds down it doesn't interfere with the gutter. And I will cut off this extra piece of my tab here. My folding pliers. A pair of those is essential if you're building a lot of sheds. If you were doing only one, you might get away with hand folding it over, but ideally a set of these are worthwhile. Just doing it a little bit of a bend. Moving along a little bit more. There we are, so that's folded down. It's going to stop birds being able to get up and under the end of your barge. If you don't have that fold down, it is more likely you're going to be able to get birds coming up and into that, which we don't want. So now what I want to do is just pin this back into position. 120 mils. That's just going to hold that now while I work out the rest of this flashing. What I want is a plumb cut to follow the edge of my gutter down. So for this I'm going to actually peel my plastic back. So I can put a square mark across from where my gutter line is. And then holding this and getting my bubble level has given me a nice plumb cut down there. Obviously though, I am going to want to fold this tab round to block off this end. So what I'm going to do is just do another plumb cut about 50 mil, so pretty much right to the very edge on this one. And see, if you don't get your cut the whole way through, you can just manipulate the tin backwards and forth and it will break off. So now I've got that folded right round. And I wasn't able to finish this cut before, but now that's out of the way I can. And now I'm going to have this little tab folded under here. screw into there. It's just going to stop anything being able to get up into there. So that's that all folded, that's folded, a nice cut down like that. Yeah, perfect. Now we'll just do the other end. Usually what we do to hold this piece down is on every lap, we put a screw through here and hold those into position, and then one at the very end. So for right now, I'll just put one in here. Cool. Cool. So now what we're going to work on is getting the center of our flashing right. So when they both come up, they meet in the center and look spot on. So similar to what we did down that other end, two things. I'm going to get that out the way first. And I'm going to plumb my line down. But I don't want the two just to butt into each other. I want the one to go over the top of the other one. So generally when I do this, I just think about what side you're going to see the most. So on a shed like this, you're going to drive in this way. So I'll have this one sitting over the top of that one so it doesn't catch the eye as much. So what I do want is an overlap of about 10 mil. So I can just go 15 there, and have a line down here like this. Now as you can see, I'm going to have to do my same plumb cut down here to get these up closer to being in position. I've done my plumb mark, I'm going to cut that now. I've got Reese just to hold the end of the flashing, otherwise it's easy for it to slip off the roof. So it's always, when you're doing bits like this, good to have a buddy round. And then just on this top corner here, I'm just cutting that the little corner there off, because when we've stop ended our sheets, when we did our roof, that is going to hit into the stop end. So just like we'd cut it off on our sheets, we're doing that again there. Alright, we'll just slip this up now. So we've got a pretty good line there. Just how our bottom two flashings are fitting is not perfect. So I'm just going to mark here. Cut that off. All these flashings are made by people, not the machines. The machines haven't taken over yet. So look, there's always going to be slight imperfections in them. So I just bent that so it sits nicely. The two bottoms don't match up perfectly. So I'm just going to cut smudging off. And down below you won't notice. But I do want to come over. See, I'm not right in the centre of my rib, so I do need to come over a bit further. Let's slip it up a little bit more. There we go. So I got that into the centre. I'm just going to put a T screw there to hold that for the time being, and then I'll replace that with a rivet. So now we've got our two barges on, we've got our middle nicely done, it's time to do this end, and this is why we've left this long. So one of the first things I'm going to do is project the line of the barge up onto my ridge, like this on both sides. I'm going to want to keep this piece of the roll to start with, so I'm going to mark along like this. Everybody does these a little bit different. Some people might leave a square finish there. Some people will come down and do a bit of an angle back. I like to come down and do a bit of an angle back. So I'm going to come down 50 mil, put a mark, and then I'm going to come in 20 mil from the edge, and then project my line across like this. And then make everything uniform, do the same on the other side. So I'm just lifting the tin up and my snips up so that I'm not rubbing against the flashing the whole time and putting scratches into it. Sometimes it is actually easier to be up on the roof to do this, so just whatever feels comfortable for you when you're doing it. There's a double fold on this bottom edge, so it's quite hard to get your initial cut through. Once you get that, you're away laughing. Now I'm going to mark up my rolled edge a little bit. We're talking probably 20 odd mil, and cut up that. If you wanted, you can release a lot more screws in your ridge, and then it's going to give you a bit more flexibility to pull and work on this as you do it. Now I'm just starting to flatten this out. I need to cut up it a little bit further. I'm just going to put so now I've got my plate flat. I'm going to line up the centre there, and then come just below my corner there. Same on this side. I'm going to replace these for rivets on this, but to start with I just put a T screw in to hold that into place. And now I want to round this edge off here, sort of a bit like that. Now I'm going to put a couple of cuts into here. And then I'll grab my hammer and I'm going to hammer these down. Cool, and that seals up the end of that. On this, if water gets in, water's going to come down, run out the roof. So you don't really need to silicone it if you were wanting to, and if it was for a habitable, you can run some beads of silicone down here and down here, and then just screw that off, and that's going to keep it even more watertight. Big bead of silicone, which I will do afterwards, but it's a messy job, so it's not nice to do when you're on camera. But that's pretty much the basics of how you do your ridge, your end of your ridge, and all the rest of it. Cool, so we've got the PA door, we've taken that back out, and we've got our flashings on the ground. So obviously it's similar to a roller door in that your flashing's going to stop here and then come down onto your vermin. So we've already started cutting one. So that's just going to fit in like this. Obviously this is what we call the Shannon flashing, and how that works is we've measured it, it's the same depth as the rib on your T-rib. It's got a fold, comes back like this. So instead of having to have a flashing that came the whole way over here, really big, having to have the head flashing come the whole way through, we've just done two of these that look exactly the same, so it's nice and symmetrical on it, and it's gonna keep any water out. So we'll pop that in like that, we'll rivet it into the doorway here, and then we'll put some screws in on the lines there to hold this in. When we put the PA door back in, we will use some compressible foam, and we'll run compressible foam down both edges of the door. So when that door gets pushed in and screwed off, that compressible foam's making it a watertight finish onto your flashings. The head flashing at the top, stopping all your water coming down, and then you've got a sealed building. Cool, so now we're going to do our window flashings. So we've had to pop our window back out, and I'm going to start with my bottom flashing first. Obviously important that when you've cut all the bottoms that none of this tin's going to get in the way of it. So this piece here I might just trim down a little bit more. And then what I want is this flashing's going to come down and sit over the top of that one. So I'm going to extend this past, and I'm going to fold my corners up. So that will be my first thing to do, is get a measurement. So it's not going to come past there, so 70 mils is fine. So if I mark 70 millimeters there, square up. I'm going to put a square line across the top here, and then do a 30 mil turn up. So then I'll mark 30 mils there. So I've got my upstand there now. Now I need to get a measurement for the window. 1715. Mark from there. And then I'm just going to mirror what I've done on that side on this side. So got that set in there. I'm just going to put a couple of Tex screws in to start with to hold that into position. I will have to change these two rivets, otherwise they'll get in the way of the window. The good thing about using Tex screws to start with is that if you do need to take it back out to change something, you're able to just unscrew it and redo it. So now we're going to get our flashing, which I've made both these flashings the same size so that it yet again looks uniform onto the build. So I've taken my measurement from the top of my head flashing to the bottom of here, and I've marked that, and then I'm going to cut away this excess. So I obviously need to cut this off because it's a little bit long, but also I need to cut it back to there. Measure that, which is 10 mils. So now I've got that sitting in position how I want it, I am going to decide here how I want to finish this. So either we could do a full cut like this, but I think that will look a bit sharp on this. So I'm just going to do a little cut across there just to give it a little bit of an angle. We go 50 mil up, mark there, pull my plastic away. So that's the bottom, and then I'll cut this off. There we are, little finish there. I'll clean that up and we'll rivet that on and then Tex screw that into position. Do the same on the other side and then we'll be able to slip the window back in. Cool, so we've got our flashings in for our window and now we just need to put some of this foam on. It's actually not double-sided, but one side is sticky. So if you get that, and it just goes on the very edge of your window. So the top doesn't need it, just the two sides. just before you put your window in, take the white tape off the underside of it. It's just there to stop the tape sticking to itself when it's in its big roll. Cool. Let's go on bottom first. Beautiful, yep. You can let that go now. That'll hold in there. So now we've got that in there. I'll put a few more screws back into my head flashing and then we'll push that in tight and screw that in. So once that's all done, your window's pretty much fully installed. You'll also see we've supplied you eco foam, and the eco foam is to come up and under here. So how that works is, see this piece here, I'm going to have to cut. So I'll just put myself a mark there like that. Get my Stanley knife. Cut that off. And this is just going to stop birds, or predominantly just birds, or when you're cleaning it, if you spray the hose up, that's going to stop any water going any higher than that. And then here, these two pieces just join together like this. And then I'm going to cut that end as well in line there. I usually just push it up sort of about there. And then either rivets or Tex screws. And just do that every second one, and that's going to hold the foam up there and keep that all in. So that's your window in. Obviously put my Tex screws back in the top, push the window, have somebody pushing on the window to compress that foam, put the screws in, and then that's going to hold it in place. And then a Tex screw or a rivet there to hold that down. Perfect, your window's done.